I just want to go on TV and let loose, but can't. But it's cool for Tom Green to hump a dead moose. My bum is on your lips. My bum is on your lips. Right there you go.
Would you please welcome to the stage from Ottawa, Ontario, Tom Green.
Oh, that felt funny.
Okay. Who's this? Who's this?
This is Charlie. There you go. This is Charlie, everybody. Yeah, and Charlie is my my dog. She's a rescue from the Bahamas, actually. So, and she's always with me, traveling with me all the time. Comes on stage with me.
She comes along with you on stage and
at my stand-up shows. This is not her first time on stage, so we're gonna have fun tonight. There you go.
Oh, she's good. She's better behaved than I am.
Yeah. Great to see you, Tom.
Nice to see you too, Brian. Thanks for being here. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Congratulations on this big award.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's a real, true honor. I can't believe it. It was really unexpected and nice surprise to get this award, and it's been a great time out here in Banff with everybody, and we're having a lot of fun.
It's been interesting to see some of the people who've won this award in the past. I mean, Eugene Levy and John Candy and Tracy Ullman. And it leads me to start with who would have been comedians or comics that you would have watched growing up that would have influenced you. Like, what's your earliest memory of seeing a comic on stage or on TV?
Well, I actually spoke about him in my speech at the award ceremony. Was the great late Norm Macdonald. I got to become friends with him later in his life when we were in Los Angeles together. But when I was a kid, I would go down to Yuck Yucks in Ottawa. I started doing stand-up when I was about 16 years old, and they let me go up and tell jokes, and it was an amazing sort of experience at a young age to be able to do that. But Norm was always my favorite comedian.
Was he there at the time? Was he in?
So he was. Yeah, he was. I was probably 16, and he was in his mid-20s. It was right before he went to Saturday Night Live, and he was one of those comedians back in those days who was, you know, he was always an out-of-the-box thinker and had more of a I guess a more of an offbeat way of approaching stand-up. And you know, stand-up at the time in the 80s there was a little bit more of a down the middle approach to it. People would put on a suit and go out and do stand-up. But he was a young guy who was just completely outrageous, nothing like I'd ever seen before, and from my hometown. So it was very inspiring when he went off to Saturday Night Live, and we became friends. Pretty close friends when I was in Los Angeles, because I built a TV studio in my living room, and he'd come up and do the web show in my internet streaming show. I think he was just kind of intrigued by the idea that you could build a TV studio in your living room in the early 2000s, and he'd come up and we'd just do these little mock Tonight shows, you know, until the wee hours of the morning, and got to know each other pretty well. And he was the greatest, one of the greatest stand-ups ever from Canada.
One of my favorites of all time, man. Yeah. Like, I still watch the YouTube compilations of him on Letterman over and over and over again. It's the greatest ever. So, but hold on, like, even before that though, you were a funny kid as far as I can tell. Like, you were doing speeches in school. I
definitely tried to be funny when I was a kid. You know, I thought it was funny. I don't know if my teachers always enjoyed the acting out in class. It started, I think, being a class clown. I was a military brat. My dad was a captain in the Canadian Army. We'd move around a lot. I'd always be the new kid in class for the first, until I was about 7 when we settled in Ottawa. But, kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2, you're new students, new friends. And so I would kind of act out in school. And
so when you started going to Yuck Yucks, you said you were how old?
16, yeah, I'd say I was 16 years old.
Was that like an open mic night? Was that an amateur night?
It was Thursday nights. It was an amateur night. And
were you a conventional stand-up for a 16-year-old? Were you doing observational stuff about school? Oh, I just mean like you weren't doing the stuff that you became known for shortly after that.
Yeah, I mean, I would wear my dad's blazer, and I would wear khaki pants and sneakers because I was trying to replicate David Letterman's look because I loved David Letterman. And I mean, I think I don't remember really any of my jokes, to be honest with you, but I was sort of, I would say, a bit quirky though. It wasn't down the middle traditional. I was definitely putting a weird spin on it, but it was fun. I actually discovered stand-up when I would go down to see Norm Macdonald, and we thought it was so cool we could go to Yuck Yucks because we were kind of at a bar, you know, but they had a restaurant license and you could go there as a teenager, so we thought it was so much fun going and discovering stand-up. But we would go down and heckle. My friends and I would go down to heckle because we, you know, needed to be, you know, getting attention whenever we could, I guess. And we got kicked out of the comedy club the week before we discovered there was an amateur night. So we went down to do stand-up. They wouldn't let me on stage because we'd been kicked out the week previous for doing we would do these silent heckles. We'd sit in the front row, and we would all put our hands on our chins like this. And then whenever the comedian told a punchline, the three of us would all switch hands at the same time. And
and they kicked you out.
Yeah, they kicked us out for that, for a silent heckle. Howard Wagman, who owns the Ottawa Yuck Yucks, has been there for 40 years, still does, a club in Ottawa, tells that story a lot. But they wouldn't let me on stage, but then the bouncer, his name was Tibor, he said we were kind of funny when he was kicking us out the week before, and he said that maybe they should give us a shot. So they gave us a shot, and the rest is history.
How'd you do? Did you do all right first time?
You know, it's funny, you know, and this happens a lot, I think. I did quite well the first night.
Yeah.
And then I came back the next week, and it wasn't quite as spectacular. I think sometimes when people do stand-up for the very first time, there's a nervousness that you have that kind of is... I think powers you, and the audience senses that, and it works well in your favor. But then the second time you do stand-up, it can be different. You might have a little bit more confidence than you really deserve to have, and then the work starts. Then it takes probably a good 10 years before you really get comfortable on stage the way that you really need to be.
But also, I think your comedy style develops too. Like when I remember, I was reading about I read like a ton of articles to get ready for this, and watched a ton of things to get ready for this. And one thing that came up in a couple of them was this college show you had. You had this college radio show where you had a rap show, and Glenn had some say it was an electronic show, some people said it was an industrial show.
Yeah.
He had another show, and then you combined the show, and in the nighttime, people would call in, and you would kind of give them a hard time. Like, people would call in to be made fun of and mocked. So even right there, Tom, like, that's like a difference between traditional stand-up, that's a difference between traditional comedy. We're starting to move towards the more out there stuff that you would become known for. Does that feel like an important moment to you, that radio show?
Yeah, for sure, because I was doing radio every Friday night at CHUO 89.1 FM. It's the Ottawa University radio station, but I was in high school at the time. I went down there for co-op, and I volunteered there, and then nobody wanted to do the midnight till 2 a.m. slot on Christmas Eve one year, so I filled in, and it was a rap music show, but I spent the whole time reading a book about bass fishing.
Yeah.
And I got a call from the station manager on Monday, and he said, well, you know, you didn't really play any music, but we thought that was kind of funny, so you can fill in whenever you want. So I started filling in on that show. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. College radio was kind of like what podcasting is now. There were no rules. When I started on CHUO, it wasn't even on the radio. It was cable FM. So the only way you could listen to it was you had to take your TV cable, unhook it, and tape it to the antenna of your radio, and there was like maybe 2 people listening. Then they eventually got their FM license a couple of years later, and we had a bit of a fun following in town because we were playing rap music, and we would do weird stuff on the show. So some of the stuff that we did on the radio show was a precursor to some of the sort of stunts and things we did when we were... Well, one thing we did was the show was from midnight till 2 in the morning, my shows, and it was called the Midnight Caller, and then I would stay after on Glenn's show, which was called Nightfall. But on the Midnight Caller, we would tell people at 2 a.m. when the show ended, I'd say, everybody listening, meet me on Parliament Hill, and bring a soccer ball, and we'll go play soccer on Parliament Hill. And about 60 people would show up. And I don't think this would work today, but like it was so long ago, you know, like I'm so old or something, but it was actually like 30 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So I guess they might still let this happen today, I don't know, but we would go down there, 60 kids would show up with
At
a
like
ball.
2 or 3 in the morning?
At 2 in the morning, 2:30 in the morning. I would walk over there from Ottawa U, And the RCMP would pull their cars up and they'd shine their lights out on the field. And we'd play till 4:35 in the morning, the bells of Parliament going off every half hour. It was a beautiful thing, and it was funny. And I think everybody involved felt like they were participating in something completely absurd and weird that wasn't even on the radio show. It was just after the show. Now, and then the first time I ever saw a cell phone, the Ottawa U station had one of those big cell phones, like you're calling in an airstrike kind of phones, And so I got that phone, and Glenn would operate the mixing board at the radio station, and I would drive around the city on the cell phone and tell people where I was, and people would start following us around in their cars while I was hosting the show. And we would go to people's houses who were listening and go in and wake up their parents on the radio with the cell phone. And then we would drive up in front of the Prime Minister, Jacques Chrétien's, and we'd honk our horns out in front of the Prime Minister's place, the whole snake of cars driving around the city. And everybody had a lot of fun doing that too.
I don't even know what my question is. But
Sorry about that, I don't know.
That's all right. What I mean by that is that I don't know what my question is, because I'm curious as to what the jumping off point is from getting on stage and telling jokes to doing you're right, Tom. I didn't know that about the radio show. That is the kind of stuff that you became well known for.
It was interesting when I was around the same time I was doing the radio show. I started making rap music, beats. I started making beats, and my friend Greg Campbell from high school, Colonel By Secondary School in Ottawa, he was a skateboarder, and we had a mutual sort of love of rap music. We listened to Public Enemy and Beastie Boys and Boogie Down Productions and Ice-T and all the early old school hip hop, and we kind of became friends over that and started rapping at the school talent shows, and we ended up getting a record deal.
Yeah.
And that and the cell phone, it was sort of when I started realizing that there was all this emerging technology that was coming out. Even the internet was sort of in its infancy, but it was drum machines, the cell phone gag, and it sort of occurred to me, I started to realize if you go figure out what the emerging technology is, you can go do something creative with it that's not really being done.
Do it first.
And that's when I realized, if you're the first person if you're the only person doing something, you're the best at it. So it was the only time I was ever the best at anything, right? But so it became a thing that I realized, when we were recording our rap music, and one of the producers we worked with back in the day sort of told me he worked his real job to save up to buy a drum machine or a sampler, and that would always kind of sort of end up paying for itself in a way, because you would be learning at a faster rate than somebody that didn't have access to that equipment. So I always had this little music studio at home, and then when the broadcasting started, I would get my hands on cameras and started experimenting with cameras and filming stuff out in the streets, trying to replicate my favorite skateboard video or my favorite David Letterman sketch.
Yeah.
And it just kind of went from there.
I can see that with the Letterman influence, the doing things to random unsuspecting people, the joke being their reaction to it. I can see the Letterman influence happen there.
In the 80s, David Letterman, Late Night with David Letterman was kind of like what the internet is now. Letterman, skateboarding, rap music, to me was, I think to young people then, was kind of what the internet is now, or what TikTok is now. It was your only real way of feeling like you were seeing something that wasn't in the mainstream, that you were discovering it yourself. Letterman was on at 12:30 in the morning. Yeah. You had to sort of almost trick your parents and think you were going to bed, and sneak down and turn on the TV, and it sort of felt dangerous staying up and watching that. And he was more outrageous and doing crazy things. He was more outrageous than Johnny Carson, the show that your parents watched, and so it felt like your own little thing that you discovered. That's what skateboarding was like for me. That's what rap music was like for me. You're listening to rap music. You were hearing people talking about another world that you didn't know about. Skateboarding, Thrasher magazine, you'd be reading about skateboarders in California and learning about things that you would never get on TV.
But I mean, I'm skipping ahead by a fair bit, and I'm going to backtrack here. But you ended up guest hosting the Letterman show, and no one gets to guest host the Letterman show. Not many people did. I mean, that must have been a real amazing moment for you to have that be this influence on you when you at 12:30, and then all those years later to find yourself actually behind that desk.
It was an out-of-body experience. It was surreal. It was. I had been a guest on the show twice, which was also equally terrifying in a way for me because I was such a. He was the first talk show. One of the first talk shows in the U.S. that I went on was Letterman, but then a few years later I got to host it, and the next day got on a plane, wrote my monologue on the plane. They didn't provide any writers or anything.
Really, you had to do it yourself?
Wrote my own monologue on the plane, got there, and walked out and did the show, and it all happened so fast that it was like a blur. But yeah, it was an unbelievable honor. I thought it was so cool that Dave just reached out and asked me to do that because it was sort of completely random. You know, it was not. I only knew him from being on the show twice. Didn't know him, you know, in any other capacity off camera. It was just those two appearances. It had been a couple of years since I'd been on the show, I think, and I was just about to start a new talk show on MTV, and just sort of randomly out of nowhere on a Thursday night, I was hosting the show. So
that's beautiful. Yeah. So let's go back a little bit. So the Tom Green Show, as the story that most people know is the Tom Green Show comes on community television in Ottawa. You and I were talking about this backstage. There's a pilot for the CBC. The CBC, in one of its many incredible decisions, decides not to take it. The Comedy Network picks it up, and even before it got to MTV, I remember being a kid watching that show on the Comedy Network. I was like in junior high. Yeah. So I was the perfect age for the Slutmobile. Absolutely. I was the perfect age for you painting your parents' house plaid.
Yeah.
I was the perfect age for all of that.
Yeah.
I got two questions on it. So one, and this is a bit of a deeper question, how were you so comfortable with awkwardness or anger? Like your parents would get angry at you. People would get angry at you, and you seemed really comfortable with it.
Yeah.
People would be.
I enjoyed that.
Can you tell me about that?
Well, the reaction was the joke. So and that's something that people didn't necessarily always pick up on when the show first premiered. Is people would watch and they say, "Oh, you know, look at this guy going around being a goof," you know. But it was me being a goof or outrageous in order to elicit a reaction, especially especially funny when it's an imbalanced reaction. Like if it's a person in a position of authority. And when you're a kid, your parents are authority figures, a security guard, or even a person on the street is, in a way, an authority. You know, they're older than you, an adult, right? And they're getting flustered by something. So, and I think that started before the show. It was just being a skateboarder. You'd go skateboard downtown, and the security guard would come tell you hey, you can't skateboard there. And it sort of became instantly obvious that this is an unjust thing. You know, I'm a kid. I'm having fun. I'm skateboarding on the street. I'm not out committing crimes. You know, I'm doing something positive, and I'm being kicked out of somewhere by a authority figure. And so you would start to kind of razz the security guard as you're getting kicked out and try to make it as sort of an awkward and weird situation as possible without actually getting arrested. This sort of, which I never have been arrested, by the way.
Oh, yeah. I've never heard.
Yeah.
I have never been arrested.
I've never
heard that much shock from I've never been arrested.
I'd like to.
In my entire life.
I've never been arrested. I've been detained. But never arrested. So, I was detained at the Hoover Dam, but that's a whole other story. But
You were comfortable with it. You were comfortable with your dad getting mad at you for waking him up in the middle of the night playing Bon Jovi.
Yeah.
You were comfortable with it.
yeah, and so I would edit all the videos. So in the beginning, when we started doing it, when we started going out with a video camera and filming these reaction videos, the first few times I would not be able to keep it together, and I would sort of laugh along. But then I'd go edit the videos myself, and this is like, it was like a Sony BVE 900, like
Right.
1980s edit system or whatever. But so too much information. But
That's the name of my show, by the way.
yeah. Oh, good. Okay, there we
Don't
go.
worry about it. That's okay.
Yeah. No, this is awesome. This is awesome. But no, so it was kind of. You would see when you're editing the video, I'd see the moment that I started to laugh or even just smirk, and I'd have to edit it out.
Why?
Because it felt too self-congratulatory, you know, like watching somebody going out trying to be funny and then laughing at his own joke. And also, it tipped off the person that was reacting that I was joking around. Whereas if I'm able to maintain a complete deadpan face and act sort of as if there's, you know, what's going on, what's wrong, there's nothing wrong here, it would be sort of an additional layer of confusion for the person. And also, I think just it became funnier to watch. It's not funny to watch somebody laughing at their own joke, you know. So it would ruin the bit. It really did. I mean, I felt it ruined the bit.
You're right. The bit was that you didn't see what was wrong with it.
Yeah. What?
Your dad
I'm
was waiting for the
naive and-
bus after
yeah,
you put the porn
yeah.
in his car,
What's
and you're
wrong?
trying to pick him up, going
Yeah,
like,
it's-
why not? Why don't you
don't
like this? I did you a favor.
Yeah, just made a nice painting on your car. What's the big deal? So I quickly got good at keeping a straight face and not laughing at the jokes, and yeah.
Things are really happening. The show is really big. You're on the cover of Rolling Stone. You're on every talk show. You're famous, man. Like you are, especially to young Canadians, we were just obsessed with watching what you were going to do when you were on Jay Leno or something like that. And then I remember the news coming out about I hope you don't mind me bringing this up, but about the cancer diagnosis.
Okay, cool. Yeah. No, I don't mind you bringing that up.
Yeah, and then the cancer special happens where, I don't know if you guys saw that when it came out, but it was incredible. Like there was really nothing like it at the time, and like there's a lot of talk around vulnerability and comedy and all that stuff now, but I watched it to get ready for this. I still have never seen anything like it, like showing surgery that on screen. And a lot of the articles I read around the time are asking you questions. It's just after it aired. And they're asking you, like, do you feel changed by this? Do you feel changed by this? And you don't really know. You're still in shock at the moment. But there's a couple of glimpses of like, yeah, it's making me rethink what's important in life. Looking back, I mean, there was some big changes after that. Looking back, does that diagnosis, does that surgery, does that time change your relationship with ambition? Does that change your relationship with your career at all?
It definitely was a complete life-changing experience. It was testicular cancer. Okay, they took my right testicle. I still have the left one. It's the middle one now. I've said that before, by the way, a few times. It's the go-to gag. But yeah, so the show had really just reached its peak on MTV. We had moved the show from New York to Los Angeles. The whole crew had picked up, gotten rid of apartments. We moved out to Los Angeles. We were just in the middle of doing our first few shows in Los Angeles. We were at the top of the ratings. I got this cancer diagnosis, and it was terrifying, completely terrifying, and traumatic. And there was definitely a good week there where I had no intention of telling anybody that I had testicular cancer, let alone doing a television special about it that followed me through the whole procedure and into the hospital and recovery and everything like that. But we had to stop the show, and the more I kind of got used to the fact that I was dealing with testicular cancer, getting my right testicle removed and surgery, maybe getting a lymph node dissection, which I had to have, which is a very invasive surgery. and learning more about the disease, I started realizing, you know, this is something we could make a special about. You know, we were also just so, you know, and this is maybe even selfishly, we were so driven doing the show that I didn't want to stop doing the show. And I thought, all my guys had just, you know, the crew, you know, men and women from New York had all moved out to do the show, and then all of a sudden we're quitting the show. So this kept the show going for another couple of months, and I started to realize this would actually help people, because it's young men get testicular cancer between the age of 15 and 35 is the prime age, which was totally our audience. You know, that was who was watching the Tom Green Show on MTV, and it's the prime place for young men 15 to 35 years old on television, MTV in 1999. So 2000, I guess it was. But so we ended up keeping the show going. We filmed this special, and you know, I have some of this in the documentary too. Every time I do stand-up, at least once a month, some guy in his 40s will come up to me after the show with his wife, and sometimes, you know, in sort of a very emotional way, sort of tell me, you know, how they went to the hospital because of that special. So it's been a very positive thing in my life, and to answer your question, it did change my perspective on work. I still, of course, am very passionate about my work, but you know, it did make you realize in that moment when you get a cancer diagnosis, you know, and you're 28 years old, and you know, you remember the line where, you know, seconds earlier, the most important thing to you was the show, and how are we gonna, you know, get the ratings up, or how are we gonna get this movie going, or all these things that seem so important. And then immediately that just all goes silent. And for the next 6 months or a year, all you're worried about is survival, right? So it puts it in perspective. I've had a few traumatic health issues over the years. I stepped on a fire just a few years ago. It wasn't very publicized in any way, but it was just coming up on 3 years ago. In Costa Rica, there was a bonfire that had been buried under the sand, and I stepped into it with bare feet and was hospitalized, almost lost my foot. I had skin graft surgery and had to be airlifted back to Sunnybrook Hospital in Toronto to get, you know, my foot stapled together. And you know, again, it was the same thing happened again, and I just it sort of almost reset that feeling, you know, where I was, you know, working on various things, and it sort of seems like it's so important, and then you just suddenly are stopped, and you're thinking you're fighting off an infection in your foot, you know, worrying that they're going to amputate your foot, or worrying that, you know, you could possibly die from that. So it's in some ways, I actually have said I actually really do believe this. I actually am glad that I got testicular cancer. I actually am. It changed me in I think many positive ways. It made me realize what's important, and I don't think I'd be the person I am today, you know, if I hadn't been through that. So, yeah.
That's yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And you feel it's nice to feel an intense sense of gratitude on just a normal day when you're not in the hospital. Yeah. Right? Because you know so many of us go through, you know, that, whether it's even a family member who's sick, and you know, it's just such a traumatic and terrifying thing and sad thing that we all have to deal with in our lives. And so when you've actually been there, you know, when I was hospitalized for probably a month with my foot, and really, you know, it was 6 months before I was really kind of walking properly again. And it was just a moment where you just go, oh, it's a good day today. I still have a foot. I still have one testicle. Everything's fine, you know.
Things aren't so bad.
You know, I'm not in the hospital. Things are good. Things are good. So you feel a lot more sense of gratitude than I may have just for simple things like being here in Banff in this beautiful hotel in this beautiful province. You know, took a drive out to the Jasper on the Icefield Highway yesterday with my amazing girlfriend Amanda, who's here in the audience. Thanks, Amanda, for coming. And so, you know,
had you been to Jasper before?
We actually almost got to Jasper. We went to the glacier, but it was amazing. Yeah, it was a beautiful. I'd never driven down that highway before. It was incredible views, and a beautiful thing.
So thank you for talking about that. I really do appreciate that, and I'm grateful for you. I feel like the last time you and I talked, you talked to me a lot about what stand-up means to you. And I didn't know if I fully understood it, because to me, you were Tom Green, who painted the thing on his parents' car, Tom Green, who, you know, created the thing that influenced a million other shows. And I didn't fully understand why stand-up was so important to you. But if I'm getting it right, it's something you can have. It's something that's not for anybody else. It's not something with an executive looking at you. It's not someone making a decision for you. It's something that's for you. And when you have that sort of realization, your connection with your audience is even deeper. The stand-up thing is starting to make sense to me now, Tom.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, you're performing in front of people, and there are people that have come to see you, and that's really what it's all about when we make art. It's you're making it for the enjoyment of others, and especially with comedy, you know, you want to hear laughs, real laughs from people sitting in front of you. So that's sort of where it all started. It was also personally, it's important to me because, you know, like I said, I started doing stand-up when I was 16 years old. I stopped when I was 19 or 20. When the rap group got that record deal, I stopped doing stand-up and didn't go back to it, you know, for 10 years. And it was always this thing that I kind of felt was sort of an unfulfilled sort of thing that I wanted to really try to master or get good at. And what you said too, it's so much of the business of television or film is you're reliant on other people giving you opportunities, and you don't always have control over that. And then when you do make television, it's very much a group effort. You have to work with writers, and which is fun to do, but sometimes that can be frustrating. You don't get to do things exactly the way you want to do, and so you take all of those things and combine it, and it really is a fun thing. I get to see the world. I've traveled the whole world doing stand-up. I performed in Afghanistan for Canadian troops. I've performed in Iraq. I've been to Africa with the USO. I've traveled every city in North America, except for I'm going to Newfoundland for the first time in October. So this is good. This
pretty
is good.
exciting.
Yeah. So.
I don't know if you guys know this. I never talk about it. I never like to bring it up, but I'm actually from Newfoundland.
Yeah.
So, do you want to tell people a little bit about where you're living now? For people who don't know, Tom has moved back to Canada. And if you think that he's, the lone applause.
Yes, absolutely.
Tom's moved back to Canada to a ranch, to a farm, a big, beautiful. You showed me. We were on FaceTime the other day, and you showed me a bunch of the mule and the donkey and the chickens.
I have a mule and a donkey, and some chickens, and it's a whole new life experience. After 20 years in Los Angeles, at the beginning of COVID, really, it started. I got Charlie at the beginning of the pandemic, and we took off in a camper van. Charlie's named after John Steinbeck's Travels with Charlie, same spelling. Charley. You can follow her on Instagram, Charlie, the potcake dog. But so we took off in a van, and I realized how much I loved being out in nature and out of the city, and it's a very therapeutic thing for me to be in nature. And at the same time, stand-up stopped. You know, I've been touring the last 15 years or so full time, and the tour was canceled, so I was looking for something to do, and it just kind of felt like the right time to come back to Canada. My parents are doing great. I want to spend more time with them, so I found this farm that has sold my house that I'd been in for 18 years in Los Angeles, and found this, like you said, it's a beautiful farm that I can't even believe that I get to live there. I wake up and you're out in the field and the woods, and I have this giant mule. Her name is Fanny. And I ride her around the farm, and it's a whole, I didn't know anything about horses or mules or anything like that until a year ago. And it's a whole new life experience. But you know, I find being in nature and being outside is a real way to keep yourself to stay positive and I find a lot of happiness there. You know, if you hear about, when you talk about, you know, if you're always thinking about the past, that can be sort of a way of feeling sort of depressed and sad because you're thinking about regrets. And if you're thinking about the future all the time, you're sort of worried about things you might have to do, and that'll cause you some anxiety. But if you're walking through the woods and you're on a mule and you don't know how to ride a mule, and if you fall off this giant mule, you're going to be hurt. You know, and there's bears in the woods, and they're hunting you. It's terrifying. So you can't be worried about paying your taxes, or, no, I wish I'd never humped that dead moose back in the day, you know. You know, you're just in the moment, right? And that's where you find true happiness. That's when you've truly arrived.
Can I say that we're happy you humped the dead moose? I think we can all agree on that.
That moose was from Alberta, by the way, so...
Hold on, the moose, dead moose that you humped was here in Alberta?
The dead moose I humped was here in Alberta, yeah. So yeah, it's when we were driving across Canada before MTV. And Eminem rapped about that, too.
Yeah, did you ever talk to Eminem about that line in the...
I never spoke to him about it, but he did actually let us use that song Slim Shady in Freddy Got Fingered in my movie. It's in the credit roll, which he does not license his songs to movies, but he's a hard guy to get a hold of. But yeah, he was rapping about two Canadians in that song, myself and the dead moose. And I just want to go on TV and let loose, but can't. But it's cool for Tom Green to hump a dead moose. My bum is on your lips. My bum is on your lips. Right there you go.
That must have been, it's amazing. I can retire and move to a farm now that you've wrapped the real Slim Shady in front of me. That's it for me. So let's just get this out in the last couple of minutes we have here. It's a really amazing time for you right now. Mm-hmm. So a docuseries about your move and your life on the farm, a documentary about the Tom Green Show and the impact, and you just recorded a new stand-up special.
Yeah.
It's a very busy time for you right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm in the show The Trades as well on Crave, which is a lot of fun. So it's it's a busy time, and I'm very grateful for all of this exciting stuff that's happening. You know, I moved to the farm. I wasn't intending to retire. I just wanted to. I think that one thing that's really interesting about it is, I think when COVID happened and everybody stayed inside for a while, life continued on Zoom calls. And I started working with a new manager who's an amazing guy. His name is Rory Rosegarten. He's in New York, and he manages Ray Romano, and he was the executive producer of Everybody Loves Raymond, and he's a legend in the comedy world and a super good friend to me now. And we would be on these Zoom calls all the time and just sort of planning the show and stand up and things like this. And I said, you know, do I think I still need to live in Los Angeles? And he said, no, you don't need to live in Los Angeles. You know, I never lived in Los Angeles when I did Everybody Loves Raymond. And so I just kind of realized we're living in this world today where you can be anywhere at any time. You don't have to be in the city. You can take a meeting. If you need to talk to somebody, you can get on a Zoom, and the world's become such a smaller place in so many ways. So, and it's great being home in Canada. We had a cottage near this farm where I was growing up, when I grew up, and I remember hearing whippoorwills when I was a kid, you know, and it was and bullfrogs and the red-winged blackbirds, and these sounds, you know, they kind of become like burned into you. And then so you get up in the morning and you hear these sounds that have been with you your whole life, and it's just very calming. And it's you know, I'm proud to be Canadian. I get to make content and film. I don't like calling it content.
Yeah.
It sounds so reductive, but I did just call it content. But
we're gonna edit that out. Don't worry about it.
But to be filming, and I have my cameras, and I'm able to shoot video, and you're showing Ontario, and you're showing the beauty of this country. It's a great thing.
Do you, in the last minute we have here, and I don't know, this is a risk because I don't know if you do, but are you ever able to take a moment and be on that farm just down the road from where you were from? And we didn't talk about the web show. We didn't talk about Freddy Got Fingered, which I have filmmakers on my show talk to me all the time about, like, the importance of that film to them, and and how it's a Criterion film right now.
Yeah,
like,
it's pretty amazing. Yeah,
and we could talk about that another time.
Yeah, no, I don't mind you leaving that out.
Yeah. Do you ever get a moment on the farm to look back on everything that happened? To look back on what became?
Well, every day I get up, like I said, I saddle up Fanny, we ride off into the wilderness, and it really is first of all, walking in nature is an amazing way to feel a calmness, but with an animal, whether it's a dog or you can really see through their eyes too. You sort of almost become more following your instincts as an animal yourself. You're watching them, listen and look and smell, and it takes your mind off things. So when I come in from riding the mule, and then I sit down at my edit bay with an editor, and we're editing this documentary about my life right now. So that, I would say, if you ever have the opportunity to make a documentary about your life, don't do it. Because it's a strange thing. We're going through thousands of hours of video and looking back. So reflecting on it is what I have been doing quite a bit this year. Looking at old footage, like when I got that call from Letterman, and just sort of seeing yourself literally as a different person, seeing myself before I had cancer as this sort of young, naive, wild and crazy kid running around without a care in the world, and you kind of, but it's been fun. It's really fun to look at all those old stuff, and I have had a lot of time to reflect on it, and I
hope you're proud of it. I hope you're proud of it.
Yeah, it has been a nice week here getting this honor of getting this award, and it's been a nice feeling. I mean, it's very encouraging, because sometimes, in this business, especially when you make movies like Freddy Got Fingered, you can get discouraged. People can say things that are not so nice. You have bad reviews, or you read comments on Instagram and Facebook, and we're living in a world today where we are all putting. If you choose to put yourself out there, you have to have a thick skin, because you're going to read a lot of mean things said about you, and it can be discouraging, and it affects me. I actually really am affected by negativity. So when positive things happen, or when you look back on the good things that happened in your life, it is a nice thing, and I feel very grateful. Yeah.
I can say on behalf of everybody in this room that there's like a tremendous pride that you're a Canadian, and there's a tremendous joy in all the work that you've given us over the years. And I think for people like me who are in our late 30s now, who grew up watching the Tom Green Show when we were kids and how formative it was to us, we can't thank you enough. This is such a richly deserved honor. Tom Green, everybody, give him a round of applause.
Well, and thank you, Tom. I'd like to say thank you, everybody. Not just getting this award, but also being here on cue with Tom Power. This is an amazing experience.
This is the cherry on the cake.
This is the pinnacle of it's an amazing thing. Thanks for walking through my life with me, Tom. It's been an honor.